Hey guys, so today's video will basically just be a sew along / tutorial on how I achieve these dance uniforms. It is a bit lengthy, honestly guys, but if you do want to get through it a little bit faster, you can speed it up a little bit and just keep the sound on so you can still hear what I'm saying, or you can double the speed and just watch through and just, I guess, kind of figure it out on your own, and then if you're confused on a part, just slow it down and replay it. All right, I hope you guys enjoy. Okay, so y'all, this is what we're working with. I have 22 yards of Lycra. I think I got 3 yards of sequin mesh. I really wanted the larger sequins, but since it was so last minute, this is what I had to deal with. And then I have 11 yards of 6-inch fringe. And I have 11 zippers. So y'all, I'm gonna get started. Okay, y'all, so these are my patterns that I made. I just did a medium and I'm gonna grade them from there. Really, I'm just gonna cut out the extra from these. I'm not even gonna make any more sets of patterns because I'm being lazy like that. But this is the back, and I had to add an extra inch because I think I made it a little too short. That's the back. I'm gonna cut 2 pieces of this. This is the, I've got a wide angle. Oh, it's blurry. Okay, this is the front piece. And it's gonna have sequin right here. I'm just gonna do a sequin overlay over it. So that's why I made this piece, so I can use this to cut out my sequin and just lay it on top and top stitch it on. And then it's gonna have some other details like the sequin trim. This is gonna be cut out. Let me see if I put it. It's gonna be like, let me get the sleeve so you guys can see. But it's gonna be a cutout right there on the sleeve. You can see the little dash lines, like it's gonna be a sleeve cutout trim with the sequins. So you guys will see though, I'm about to get started cutting this stuff out. Oh, and this is my neck piece. All right. So these had to be done in a very limited amount of time, so I did skip doing lining, which they didn't mind at all since it's a medium weight fabric. So what we're going to do first is we're going to lay our fabric out on a flat surface, either the floor, a clean floor, or a large table. If you have a sewing table, that's great, like the folding table. But you're going to lay it flat and you're going to fold it. You want to fold it where it stretches the most this way. You're going to place your pattern on fold, and then you're going to begin to pin and cut out your first pattern piece, which will be your front. Fold your fabric again and get ready to cut your back piece out. You're folding just so you can cut out both pieces at the same time. You're going to pin everything down and cut it out. Now, here I did not do my negative ease yet. And negative ease is when you have a stretched fabric, especially an extremely stretched fabric, you want to do negative from the seam allowance so it allows it to fit snugly. I did not do that here. I simply cut it out the way I have it with my seam allowances already added, and I will just subtract the extra later. I did not want to confuse you guys. So with that being said, if you haven't added your 1/2 inch seam allowance onto your pattern, you want to make sure to cut a 1/2 inch out on the back when you're cutting it out, and this gives you your space for your zipper. So I had already cut out my sleeves, and you will use your front piece of your pattern to cut out your accent piece. You can cut it out however you want. This is the shape that I ended up going with. Okay, so here guys, we're gonna start getting our accent pieces ready. This will be the sequin at the end of our pant leg for our ankle and the sequin that goes at our wrist. So what I'm doing right here is I'm just facing the lining with the ankle piece for one of the legs. Actually, it'll be 4 of them because you're going to do front, back on the left side, front, back on the right side. So I'm going to sew along the bottom edge of this, a 1/2 inch away from the edge, pulling a little bit as I go. Then I'm going to flip it around. I'm going to do this part to all of my pieces first, and then I'm going to show you the next step because I do not want to change my top thread, but I will have to change it to silver instead of red when I get ready to top stitch. I forgot to say the measurement of each of these pieces will be 1/2 of your ankle measurement plus a little extra depending on the stretch of your fabric, just to accommodate the foot going through. You don't want to make it so tight to where they can't fit their foot through. Now I'm going to grab either my front piece or my 2 back pieces, and I'm going to attach this to the bottom of the legging part where the ankle is. So I'm going to face right sides together and I'm going to pin once it's flipped inside out. Once we have it pinned, we're going to get ready to run it through our sewing machine, sewing a 1/2 inch away from the edge. Now we're top stitching along the bottom edge, a 1/2 inch away from the edge, and also we are top stitching where the ankle of the pant and the ankle cuff meet. You're going to want to repeat that for all 4 of your ankle cuff pieces, as well as the 2 long strips that you did for your wrist. And those are done basically the exact same way. The pieces are just cut in one piece, one continuous piece, which is equivalent to your wrist measurement. Again, if the fabric does not stretch, make it a little bit bigger to accommodate the hand going through. So I already did that here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to install my fringe into my sleeve seams. For each sleeve, I used about a 1/2 inch of fringe. And again, this is 6-inch fringe. You can go as long as you want. I wouldn't recommend anything shorter than 6-inch. So you're going to want to take your fringe and you want to line the end of your fringe up with the end of your cuff. You're going to pin it in place so it doesn't move, making sure that your fringe is falling towards the inside of your sleeve. You're going to meet one side of your cuff to the other side, and you want to pin. First pinning where you have your fringe at. And I did the pins this way because it seemed like when I did it the other way, it kept pulling single strings off of the fringe. So you're going to want to do this all the way up from your cuff to your armhole. I don't really pin y'all because I'm lazy, but I would recommend several pins. I'm just going to guide it through till I get all the way to the end, making sure that my fringe stays in place. So this is what you end up with, guys, and I love how it looks in the end. It looks so neat. It's a very pretty accent, and you can honestly do this in between any type of seam. You could do this in between a waist seam, in between a pant seam, just anywhere. So now I'm laying my front pattern piece down so I can lay my accent on top of it, pin it, and simply top stitch it on. Stuff like this used to really confuse me because I used to super overthink it, but a lot of times it's just top stitched on. And then if you're adding lining, you add lining. If not, just make sure that it looks very neat on the inside and that you use the color of your accent piece on top and the color of your under fabric, which would be red in this case, on the bottom. So it looks very, very neat. And I think I actually show you guys how it looks on the inside in a minute. And I'm just using a basting stitch here. I think I have it on a stitch length of 5. My tension is very low. I think it's on 4 or 5. And my needle position is at 3. Okay, so I don't know why, guys, but this is my favorite part, and this is the part where we make our own trim. Now, if you can find some trim that you want to buy, that's fine, but if you can't find any to match the accent fabric that you use, you're going to make your own. So I cut out strips that were really long and about 1 inch to 1/2 inch wide. It doesn't really matter, but what I'm going to do is right sides facing, I am going to sew these strips along my accent curve. Now we're going to sew at a regular stitch length and a regular tension. Regular stitch length is about between 2.5 and 3, and we're going to sew a 1/2 inch away from the edge. And we're going to do this all the way down. So once you get to the end, you do not want to sew past the edge of the accent piece. But what you do want to do is, after you've sewn all the way down, you want to cut your strip about 1 inch to 1.5 inches further than where you stopped at. This will leave you enough room to make your point. You're going to want to repeat this step for the bottom curve of your accent piece. Now you're going to take this strip and you're going to flip it over, pin it in place at the end, and you're going to top stitch it. Now when you're top stitching, same rule applies. You do not start past where your accent piece stops. So I'm going to do that right now, guys, and you can watch me as I do that. Now I'm going to fast forward through this part, but you're basically just repeating the same thing that you just did for your bottom curve. Now we're going to do our last strip, basically repeating the steps that we did for the first two. Make sure to pull your strip a little tight as you sew, because you don't want it to end up being excess fabric when you're trying to fold it over, because it is going along a curve. I'm going to try to make this make sense, but you're not going to want to start going straight down your strip. You're going to want to start at not a 90-degree angle, but perpendicular, basically almost perpendicular to your strip that's going up and down. So you're going to start from the other strip, then you're going to pivot, and you're going to start sewing up around your curve until you get to the top, and you're going to reach your point, and you're going to pivot again. Now you're going to cut out your point to make it sharp, and you're going to top stitch on the other side of your strips, the part that you did not stitch already. Now I'm going to pin at my armhole, and if you're a beginner or even intermediate, I would suggest pinning all the way down from your armhole or armscye to your cuffs at the bottom. But I don't like to pin because, again, I'm very lazy when it comes to pinning, so I just pin at the top and I pin at the bottom. Sometimes I may place a couple pins in between, but I'm basically going to sew all the way down my side seam on both sides, and I'll be following with a zigzag stitch to secure. Now I'm sewing up my shoulder seams, and again I'm following with a zigzag stitch just to secure. Now I'm gonna get started sewing my strips down the sides of my legs. And basically I'm gonna do this in a similar way to how I did my trim on the top part. So I'm going to basically, I'm doing it a little different though. I'm gonna fold it over about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch, and I'm gonna pin it. I'm gonna let it overlap the bottom since the sequin is kind of forgiving, so it'll still look neat at the end. I'm just gonna cut it to clean it up. But I'm gonna sew the strip all the way down. And then I'm gonna pivot under the arm, and I'm gonna sew, and then I'm gonna pivot again, and I'm gonna sew all the way back down, folding it over the same way I did it the first time. It's actually very, very simple, and I hope I didn't confuse you guys with that. Okay, so now it's time for me to do my sleeves. I'm gonna drop them in on both sides, and y'all know I hate doing drop-in sleeves. If you don't know my technique, then go watch my mesh v-neck bodice tutorial, and it'll show you how I do my sleeves generally. But since these have the fringe in them and I wanted to go on ahead and do that first, I'm gonna do drop-in. So I'm gonna line up the top point of my sleeve to my shoulder seam, and I'm going to line up my underarm of my sleeve and my underarm of my bodice. And I'm going to sew all the way around, and I'm going to follow with a zigzag stitch. Okay guys, so basically what I'm gonna do now is I am going to, since these are quick uniforms and since I'm not doing lining, normally I would face the lining with the outside of the main fabric to hem my parts that need to be hemmed. But what I'm gonna do this time is I'm just going to fold over from the shoulder seam all the way down to where the zipper is on both sides, and I'm going to do a zigzag stitch over top just to make it neat. And it actually looks really good on the outside, you can't even tell, and if you trim off the excess on the inside, it looks neat as well. So I'm going to flip this part over to where the zipper stop is at the very top. And again, I'm going to do my zigzag stitch, slightly pulling the fabric as I go. Okay guys, so now I'm moving on to my collar piece. For a medium-sized girl, the neck size is usually about 13 inches, so I like to add a half an inch for comfort, and then I add a half an inch on each side for my seam allowance. So that gives us 14 and a half. So I do 14 and a half by 4. Then you would want to fold the piece like it would be folded on the neck, and you want to cut at an angle on both sides. Not too much, but just enough to where it will contour more to the neck towards the top, because the neck is usually smaller at the top. So what we want to do is interface both sides of our seam allowances, and this is, if you're sewing clasps, it will make it a lot more sturdy. So a half an inch away from the edge, and clip your corners and invert. And then you are going to fold it to find the center point of your collar piece. Then you want to find the center point of your bodice neckline, and you can do that by lining up the shoulder seams and just sticking a pin to mark where that middle is. You're going to want to meet the middle of that piece up with the middle of your collar. You're going to also want to pin where the shoulder seams are. So basically you are pinning at the shoulder seams, and you will sew 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch past that. So basically you're sewing 1/8 of an inch out from one shoulder seam all the way around, slightly stretching as you go, half an inch seam allowance to 1/8 of an inch past your other shoulder seam. Now you're going to fold your seam allowance over of your collar so that you can sew a half an inch away from the edge. You want to pin it at the end. You want to pin it where your collar meets your bodice, and you're going to want to do the same for the other side. You're going to stitch a half an inch all the way from one side to the other, again stretching slightly as you do it. You can do this as a straight stitch, or you can do this as a zigzag stitch. It's totally up to you and how you want it to look on the outside. Here I'm just cleaning it up so it looks good on the inside. I'm unsure as to why I didn't show this part, but you guys, the last part that you do is you're going to sew up your inseam, which is basically the inside seam from one ankle to your crotch to the other ankle. So you do that and then you zigzag stitch to secure it, and you are done, guys. I really hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. It was definitely a last minute decision for me to add it, but I thought it would be helpful for somebody that was interested in making uniforms, especially easy uniforms. So yeah, there we go. If you guys have any questions, as always, feel free to comment below. Like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, guys, live, love, now go be fierce.